Okay, welcome to Monday's lecture. We're going to wrap up chapter 19 and 20, hopefully within an 8 to 10 minute lecture. Um, we're going to talk more about the rise of the samurai and warrior class, but right now we're just kind of going to breeze through what's happening in Japan. So first off, you should know that Japan is kind of like its islands. It's separated into multiple people running it. So it's just like any. It's like actually it's more like a United States, one of the states in the United States, where each state has a governor. So Japan is going to be broken up into ujis or semi-independent clans. Around 400 CE, that's 400 years after Jesus. 400 CE, current era, the Yamato clan is going to take over. They are going to control much of the land. They'll give some of the land to peasants in order for the peasants to return to give them food. This is going to be very similar to what we've been talking about in Europe with the feudal system. It's a little bit different, but it's still, emperor at the top, then you have your warriors, then you have your peasants. So it's still going to be that triangle pyramid of like who's going to run things. So Japan is going to be made up of a lot of different, during the 400, 500, 600s, it's going to be made up of a lot of different clans, and they're all paying allegiance to one emperor or at times empress. So moving on, obviously are the islands of Japan. So this whole chapter is just about like how did China, Korea, and India influence Japan. We talked about briefly about how Buddhism was established. Buddhism came to Japan via Korea and via China because there was interaction between both countries. You have Buddhism, you also have Zen Buddhism, which is just a little bit more strict on some of the things that it's going to do. You also have the style of writing. The Japanese style of writing, which is called kana, is going to be taken in part from the Chinese characters kanji. So they're just going to simplify it. So there's going to be heavy influence in the Chinese influencing the Japanese culture. You have Neo-Confucianism, which if you remember anything that we talked about Confucianism last year, it was more about like these roles of like father to son and who's going to control these. Neo-Confucianism is just a slightly newer age of Confucianism, but it's still very strict about who is above who. You have the Chinese form of government, which basically just says we're going to govern more. That is going to be an influence. So instead of kind of loosely controlling things, it's going to be like the government controls a lot more. It's supposed to be based on merit, not just who you know. But in reality, anytime they say that, it's still going to be based on who you know. Like if the king or if the emperor gives birth to a son, his son's going to be higher up. If the son has a son, his son's going to be higher up, whether they're good or not. And some of the architecture is also going to come over from Korea and China. Just think about pagodas and stuff that you might see in some Japanese tea gardens and things like that. The government overall is famous for these 17 article constitution. It states the emperor is the supreme ruler. That's the main thing you need to know about that. If you want to delve further into Japanese history, you absolutely can. But we're just going to kind of brush the surface. And I'll have a few other videos to kind of give you more detail than what I'm giving you here. But just so you know, the biggest thing from the 17 article constitution was that the emperor has the final say. Government officials are ranked just like it was in China, where you're going to be based on taking exams and things like that. The government is centralized and large. Like I said, the government is going to control a lot more. And jobs are supposed to be based on what you know and what you can do. But in reality, it's still going to be based on, are you in nobility class? Are you higher up? Then you probably get the job, whether you're more qualified or not. By 645, about 250 years later, you have the Taika reforms. They're also known as the Great Change. What this says is the emperor now controls all the lands, not those ujis, not those semi-independent clans. So now everybody has to pay tribute to the emperors under the Taika reforms. The emperor and government officials redistribute the land to peasants, and then the peasants in turn are paying the taxes or food or whatever the emperor needs. Once again, very much like feudalism we see in Europe. This is just a picture of the Heian period. This is obviously a longer period, so essentially 800 to almost 1200, so about little around 400 years. This is just going to be a little picture, and you guys can read it. One of the things that's going to happen is that the city, capital city, which used to get moved around like a ton all the time, like anytime an emperor died, they'd start a new capital somewhere. It'd be like, oh, the capital's in Santa Monica now. Oh, the emperor died, so now the capital's in Venice. Okay, that emperor died. Okay, now the capital's in Orange County. Da-da-da. So they keep moving around. Finally, they decide to have the capital city in Heian-Kyo, and this is actually known as kind of a golden age as well. They'll keep the capital there. Heian-Kyo is actually currently known as the city of Kyoto today. So it's not, oh my gosh, it's not Tokyo. Gosh, sorry, couldn't think of the Japanese capital. It's not Tokyo, which is the Japanese capital today, but it's still Kyoto, which is a very major city. It's very much an aristocratic city. It's very much a government city. So if you are a government official, if you're like a judge, a lawyer, anything to do with government, you're probably living in Kyoto. And then, of course, importing all your food from everything else. They do pretty much focus most of their time on art and poetry and writing and beauty and ceremony and tradition. It's more like, hey, we have a very special fan dance. Let's do that again today. Not so much focus on like the greater outside of things, meaning are people going to attack us? How are the peasants doing? But it was more about like, hey, let's go to this poetry reading again. Just kind of more of a very chill lifestyle. And they, of course, expect the samurai and the warrior class to kind of help them out for that. This actually does allow outside people to come in, this kind of lack of really doing a lot of government work and focusing more on the arts. It does allow outside people to come in and gain control of the government, and they kind of just let it go because they're like, oh, this guy's going to take over the government a little bit. That's fine. I'm going to go watch this play. I'm going to go watch the geishas play some instruments, things like that. So I hope that's making it clear. Like the high end period, one of the reasons golden age is because they really did focus a lot on art and not as much on other things. This is actually a little tea ceremony video that I showed in the past, but I'm not going to make you watch it. If you want to, you can. And that is it for chapter 19 and 20. This is a pretty significant, like I was going to say, this is actually a pretty light chapter. I get more in depth with the warrior culture. And I'm going to post a couple other videos that I want you to go through and watch. And I have questions to go along with that as well. But it's just kind of just an introduction, like I said, to Japan, not delving super deep into that. It just depends on the topics that we're going to go through. After we get done with Japan in the next week and a half, we'll be moving on to the Mayan Incan civilizations. And we'll have a little bit more stuff to go over there and some more primary documents and stuff. I hope you guys are all doing well. And please, once again, make sure you're getting all your work in. Bye.